Thank you so much, dear Ognjen. I really like this vibe you always set up. And good morning from my side, and welcome to our panel. A really important topic, future of labor in these uncertain times. For decades, work as defined by geography, where you live, often determine where you work, how you are protected, and which rules apply. But it was also defined by something else, stability. In my point of view, is still very relevant. And not only for me, because I usually meet people who think that in the same or similar way, people usually need stability. There was a time when job security meant joining one company and staying there until retirement. You would celebrate every 10 years with a jubilee award, and at the end of your career, you would receive a watch from your company. Yeah, and for us who grow up in this region, I'm sure that some of us have a very good memories. We didn't just inherit values from our parents, we literally inherited those watches, or depending on the gender perspective, gold or silver bracelet or necklace, and from our mother's companies, which already tells us that even in that time there was some gender differences. Mia will like this. And I'm not complaining, especially considering that gold today is worth around 70 euro per gram. So perhaps that was actually a very good long-term investment. But later, I will ask you, what do you think, what children or grandchildren of my generation, 50 plus, will inherit from our companies? But joke aside, that world of predictability seems is gone, and has the word been replaced by the word of flexibility. I'm not a big fan of that word. Today, work is increasingly borderless. Talent moves across countries, companies hire globally, and digital platforms redefine what it means to be employed. At the same time, artificial intelligence is beginning to reshape not only how we work, but who works and under what conditions. Regarding to education, we very often hear that we need better connection between education system and labor market. What does it really mean today? For me, it seems obsolete if we think that children who will, in this September, enroll school, will enter into labor market 2042 and stay there competent and competitive until, let's say, 2090. This raises a really complex question, so I will start with Andrea, next to me, because young people are often the first to the embrace of borderless work, remote jobs, freelancing, and international careers. As you a young ambassador, European ambassador, what do you think, what is the most important thing for your profession, for young professionals today regarding of labor, and what state authorities should do in order to create better conditions for work?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. When I think back to the start of my career, actually my first job was remote, and the rest of the companies that I have worked with are international companies which predominantly work in hybrid environments. So yes, absolutely, we are a generation that definitely embraced that standard of globalist workforce that knows no borders, but that comes with a lot of challenges and a lot of things that are happening in the market. Obviously, regulation is a huge part of that. When you work internationally in remote and hybrid environments, there is a lot of things, both when it comes to formality and compliance, that are not covered by almost any law or any type of setup, but also there are a lot of things that go unnoticed when it comes to psychological safety, promotions, being able to communicate with your teams and managers, and a lot of challenges that come to that. And the base of all of that is education, and here I would more focus on kind of informal aspects of it. We have huge issues in the region where young people don't know their rights and obligations, and it only gets more complex when they go into these environments where are more international, more things that come into part, etc. This year, European Union is introducing two very game-changing laws. One is EU Pay Transparency Act going into force at the beginning of June, meaning that all of the candidates will be able to either find out or ask about the salary for the job. And second one being an AI Regulation Act, which puts use of AI for recruitment in the high risk, meaning that you, by definition, should be more protected if your CV and everything is going to be screened by AI or you're going to be recruited. And these are the things that we are not aware of. We are not spending enough time talking about it and educating the next generation about the things that they should be protected about, that they are their rights, but also their obligations in that process.
Yeah, you just opened a question about education, and yesterday we spoke about AI bias, but going next to the question for Elena about the future of education. As I said, are we still preparing people for a world that no longer exists? And what does it really mean when we hear we need better alignment of education and labor market? What do you think about that? If I remember, maybe you should switch on our language.
Well, I will mix.
You will mix. I will
mix.
Diversity.
Your intro was very interesting, so I plan to have another, let's say, speech or opening, but do you remember, or is it still the same question? What would you like to be when you grow up? Mm-hmm. So that was the question everybody was asked. What would you like to be when you grow up? Now, should we ask the same question to our children? I suppose no. The real question should be, how many times are you willing to change yourself or reinvent yourself or have different professions during your life, because the speed of change is so fast. Back to the 18th, 19th century when industrialization, why we are now on this kind of, let's say, even speed and roller coaster, because back to the 18th and 19th century, when we invented the 40-hour work week, etc., and let's say universities as such, we need to change radically. Why? Because universities back in 13th or 14th century were not about creating professions, but understanding the world. Mm-hmm. The real universities or education system as it is became after in the era of capitalism, or let's say after Second World War. So in general, we need to reshift. And this alignment is, what you are asking is not whether we will adapt to the new job position, but alignment in creation or co-create a new system. So now with the AI emerging, you can be prepared. The knowledge is everywhere. So you need to, how do you prove yourself? How do you be valuable for your, let's say, company, either yourself or where you are employed? So how do you create the value? By being able to have critical thinking, or as I use the metaphor, always be prepared to act on your, da naoštriš sekiru, kako kažu. Znači,
Difficult.
So if you're not willing to change, or whatever you're doing, always know what you're doing individually and as a society, to be prepared to sharpen your axe.
Thank you so much, Elena. Yes, I understood the key words to teach them to understand the world. Yeah, I think this is crucial.
And as Socrates said, I cannot teach nobody anything. I can teach them to think.
To think. How
to think. So that is the crucial now.
It's
and
still valid.
That is what we are doing in M6. So what we are merging the businesses and academia. And so what our businesses are facing, that people coming out of the universities, they are not prepared for the workforce. So this is the era of non-formal education. And I believe that this non-formal education will rise, and potential of this will be even higher until we change the system completely and adapt it to the new world.
Yeah, to change the system. So let's move to the regulations part. Dominik. I know I will ask you a $3 billion question. From a labor perspective, borderless work create both flexibility and regulatory challenges. So are current labor laws becoming obsolete? And if so, what is the biggest gap we need to fix first? And which kind of legal framework we need today? And what is the biggest risk today? Worker protections, taxation, or employer accountability?
Pa evo ovako, prije svega, zadovoljstvo mi je što sam danas ovdje i drago mi je vidjeti u publici da dosta mladih ima ljudi koji zapravo žele promjene na tržištu rada, obzirom da smo evo zaostali u zakonima koji još iz bivše Jugoslavije, koje jednostavno ne prate današnje tržište rada globalno, pa evo i ovdje kod nas na Balkanu. Poražavajuća je činjenica da jednostavno sivo tržište nije samo i kod nas ovdje, nego u Europi. Vi imate brojne kompanije iz Njemačke, iz Austrije koje koriste rupe u našim zakonima. Imamo, nažalost, vlade koje nepromišljeno donose brojne zakone, a koje nisu ni upoznate, da nisu izmijenjeni, pa evo imamo i brojne primjere i kod vas u Crnoj Gori, gdje se donosio zakon o neradnoj nedjelji koji je na kraju ponovo oboren na Ustavnom sudu. Ovo što ste i vi, Brankice, rekli, nekako smo u nekom raskoraku između samog tržišta rada, dakle, kome udovoljiti, da li ugrožavamo izmjenama zakona poslodavce ili ugrožavamo same radnike. Mislim da je tu jedan obostran problem, da ne možemo bez poslodavaca, dakle bez radnih mjesta koji na kraju moramo zadržati ovdje naše mlade, ali isto tako morat ćemo ići u izmjene zakona koje ograničavaju i što se tiče umjetne inteligencije, da vidimo koja je to krajnja granica, da ne ugrožava dakle naša radna mjesta. O tome se moramo poglavito pozabaviti, ali isto tako generacije koje dolaze na naše tržište rada. Ono što sam i ja primijetio i kroz brojne analize i sve, vidimo da više nije stvar toliko plaće ukoliko oni žele da ostanu dakle, u svojoj državi, nego jednostavno to fleksibilno radno vrijeme, fleksibilni zakoni, da evo, banalan primjer, ako završite neki projekat, čisto da vi imate to slobodno vrijeme da radite ili od doma ili ako ste negdje na putovanju. I to će generalno utjecati na budućnost, dakle, odlaska naših ljudi, ali isto tako, evo, mislim da morat ćemo raditi jednu harmonizaciju kompletnog sistema tržišta rada, Morat ćemo da radimo na povratku naših radnika, jer evo, samim tim ugrožavamo stabilnost dakle, našeg tržišta, gubimo generacije koji su ovdje se školovale, koji su kvalitetan kadar i koji odlaze evo, na tržište Europske unije, ali svakako najveći poziv i najveća sugestija opet ide prema samoj vladi i samim državnicima da moraju angažirati dakle, stručne osobe, stručnjake koji će donijeti evo, zakone koji su na obostrano zadovoljstvo i poslodavca i samog radnika.
Yeah. Hvala Dominik. Yeah, it is a right time to move to the look Wilde. We are really lucky to having you here because we need UK experience in that today in this borderless work, and Dominik mentioned the role of companies. And I would like to ask you what guidance or tools are there for companies wanting to do a right thing when employing migrant workers operating with the, of course, borderless workforce.
Yeah, I think that's what I would like to do, is slightly change the perspective. I mean, it's been very interesting to listen to the challenges that our kind of educated workers here and employees are beginning to face, and the importance of education for the future. And of course, it's you know, the AI revolution is going to radically change the work of knowledge workers and probably the opportunity for knowledge workers. And I think that probably counts for all of us in this room. It's likely the case. The focus I want to say, so we were, as a business and human rights consultancy who works with large companies to help them often to secure and build resilience into their supply chains, we are often sending out teams to look at mines or fields and the conditions of workers and indeed the impacts on communities. And last year, I think it was early last year, we had a team out in Serbia visiting an area and a group of farms that we'd visited previously 3 or 4 years ago. And actually we were quite surprised, because a number of years ago there was the workers were Serbian or within the region. And last year we encountered Ghanaian workers, Nepalese workers working in the fields. And that really struck us and also concerned us, because some of the conditions that we observed and saw were not great. They didn't match sort of, if you like, decency standards that we would anticipate. And so, and then, so what I'm seeing here and in this region is, it's great being here and seeing the energy, the investment, the development that's going on, and this summit represents so strongly in that regard. But of course, that's achieved or demands a supply of workers, and I think there's an increasing lack of workers, and in my experience, where there's a shortage of, and I'm talking about manual workers and jobs like in construction, in agriculture, in perhaps in hospitality, which are not going to be easily replaced by AI, or at least not yet. I think the robots are still a little way to come. And what we're seeing is, where there's a shortage of workers, the market serves, and people set up systems and schemes, and workers are arriving from overseas and are working in your construction sites. And and I was also looking at the example, and one of our clients was quite closely involved with the example of the Linglong factory in Serbia producing tyres. And a few years ago, there was a complaint against that factory for the treatment of Indian and Vietnamese workers, interestingly enough, both involved in the construction, particularly involved in the construction of that factory. And that factory was set up to supply tyres to major kind of Western European companies such as VW, such as Stellantis, and things like that. So there's some interesting, and actually at the end of last year, the US placed what's called a withholder, a WRO withhold order under some of their legislation, which is a set of legislation that prevents import of goods into the US suspected of involvement with forced labour. And towards the end of next year, and it's coming quite rapidly, 2027, under 2027, the European Union forced labour regulation comes into effect. And so at that point in time, you know, you can expect, if you're a company here trading into the EU, you know, you are then at trade, you are experiencing some form of trade risk there if you're not able to demonstrate that your operations are free of forced labour risk. So I'm happy to talk a bit more about that and there's some guidance, but I just wanted to position that I think we're, you know, there's another group of workers out there, of which there are rather large numbers increasingly to be seen in this part of the region, and the conditions in which they're recruited and treated are beginning to become not just a, if you like, a moral and ethical risk, but a potential trade risk for businesses as well.
Thank you so much for sharing really useful experience. So back to Andrea, and please keep in answering the second question in 2 minutes in order to cover some issue and give opportunity to audience. Do you see borderless workforce as a real opportunity for empowerment, or is there a risk of creating more insecure and fragmented career paths for youth?
I definitely see it as an opportunity because basically we are going to be in a situation where you have more opportunities, more jobs, more chances to work with some of the companies that you probably didn't have opportunity, or some kind of a framework to work with. Again, I will not repeat myself or the rest of the panelists. It's about education and how we approach that. But what we see when it comes to global career trends is something called portfolio career, where we are moving not only from one company for our whole life, even one career for the whole life. We are looking at basically these young people having 10 different side hustles or side quests that are somehow connected. Maybe they have shared values and purposes. They are all towards empowerment, etc., but they work on very different things. When I look at things that I do, they are at intersection of kind of very corporate HR, then career counseling, and then sustainability at sports events, etc. So it's something that we are seeing more and more. It is not only connected to the youth, but we see them as kind of more risk averse, and they are more willing to take those chances and be like, okay, let me see what this is all about. And I feel like this is definitely something where, if thought through and if we give enough support system, these career paths are basically the future, and companies, when hiring, can only get advantage out of it.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Elena, please, can you tell us what is one skill or mindset that will become absolutely critical in a borderless workforce? I know it's not easy.
Partly I answered in the previous, let's say shortly, to learn to be agile, learning agility. With, at the end, results with resilience. So I'm a graduated mathematician, and on one of our exams, the professor said, you will receive 3 tasks. Mathematics problems.
Mathematics is clear.
Nobody has ever solved these 3. You have to provide 5 different solutions for all the 3 tasks. And we were really, it was strange for us back then. Why are they giving us this kind of task? They were learning us how to think.
Yeah.
So nobody has ever done this. Nobody solved these problems. We had to find 5 different solutions, try to think on 5 different ways. So I believe that the future is very uncertain. What Andrea was telling about the opportunities, and Luca mentioned something about different type of workforce that we are not talking about here. We are talking about, let's say, white-collar workers. But I believe that there is a future of uncertainties. Or there will be accelerating uncertainties. So if we go back to the roots, what Charles Darwin said, evolution, who is survival of the fittest, or who will adapt, who will learn to adapt, to reinvent and change. So those people that will be willing to change and to adapt, they will survive.
Yeah, to survive. So, Dominik, I know that you really like this topic, talking about surviving. Is there still such a thing as a dignified work? And should humanity feel a sense of shame about the rise of labor exploitation, human trafficking for work purposes, and what many now call modern slavery, and who is responsible?
Nekako se ponovo vraćamo i na politiku i drago mi što ste postavili ovo pitanje. Žalosno je da mi opet vidimo i u ovakvim stvarima neku priliku za biznis i dosta, ajmo reći, stranih radnika koji trenutno uvozimo, dakle iz drugih zemalja, opet koristimo te rupe u zakonu, plaćamo ih, dakle, neregulirano, dakle, mimo zakonskih okvira, podcjenjujemo ih, žive ajmo reći, u neuslovljenim, dakle, uvjetima života. A imamo s druge strane i naravno gdje naši poslodavci i naše domaće radnike koriste kroz ugovore o radu za neke stavke gdje im se zadire u njihovu privatnost, u njihovo slobodno vrijeme, dakle poslije radnog vremena, gdje vas evo i dan danas, evo imam situacija gdje poznajem mnogo firmi koji, dakle, sve uposlenike zovu, dakle, i za 20 sati. Ne čudi me jer mislim da smo mi previše sami dozvolili i dali pristupa da kompanije sa radnicima rade što oni žele. Ne mislimo i ne vodimo, dakle, puno računa o tome za svoju budućnost, da li mi zapravo želimo takav život gdje mi ćemo svoje radnike smatrati kao neke treće osobe. Ja uvijek kažem da li mi želimo, kad odemo u Njemačku, kad su naši išli prije 30 godina, da li oni žele da budu građani drugog reda i evo mi kao da se iživljavamo i nad našim ljudima i tim ljudima koji nam dolazi iz stranih država, evo, zemalja trećeg svijeta. Hrvatska je regulirala to tržište, imali smo, dakle, negdje oko 400 ilegalnih agencija za uvoz radnika koji su, evo, izdavali lažne vozačke dozvole i slično, gdje ste na 20 kvadrata bukvalno imali do 40-50 osoba koji su živjeli dakle, u užasnim uslovima. Takvih slučajeva, vjerujem, ima i ovdje u Bosni i Hercegovini i u Crnoj Gori. Gubimo samim tim i samu kvalitetu, dakle, svog poslovanja. Dakle, vi ako nemate kvalitetnog radnika, ako on nije integrisan u društvo i nema tu komunikaciju da uči nešto kvalitetno, da ima taj europski standard koji je nama potreban ovdje, onda na kraju krajeva vi gubite i sam proizvod i kvalitetnog kupca iz Europske unije i vi jedino što vam preostaje je da stavite ključ u bravu. Stoga mislim da smo došli do tog momenta da ili ćemo početi stvari mijenjati iz suštine, iz tog problema od samih vladajućih koji trebaju donositi te zakone, a naravno mislim da smo i mi kao ljudi dosta lijeni, pa moram se, evo, iako nije dio tog pitanja, nadovezati malo na taj dio, da neke stvari jednostavno ne mogu ići preko noći, da treba dosta rada i truda i upravo zato naše firme i naši poslodavci koristi tu priliku da nas maksimalno iskoristi jer vidi da smo nekako u toj početnoj fazi naboja, želimo sve preko noći i samo se nadodaje taj posao koji nije dakle, zagarantovan u vašem ugovoru o radu i nekako trebamo ići korak po korak da bi fleksibilno i kvalitetno riješili ovaj problem, ali napominjem sa stručnim osobama poput ovdje nas svi koji trenutno sjedimo kako bi evo, imali stabilno poslovno okruženje.
Yeah. Stable environment. Open so many questions about also possibilities and responsibilities of companies. So, look, please, can you tell us, we've heard of the CCDDD and the requirement on EU companies to practice human rights, due diligence. What does this mean for companies in this region employing or looking to employ foreign workers?
Yeah, I mean, I also think sort of building on some of what Dominik's been saying is that, you know, part of the learning that we've had both in the UK and in our work with companies internationally on these topics is, you know, there is law, of course. There's plenty of national laws stipulating the way workers should be treated. The reality is that often in practice there are gaps in that implementation and there's loopholes and there's a lack of enforcement capabilities in many countries around the world. And, you know, you just can't see every pocket, every field, every bay where you have people picking cockles or shelling fish, you know. So actually one of the big arguments is the need to engage businesses in, you know, looking after their own operations and their own supply chains and looking over those operations and supply chains. So, you know, there are some initiatives. If you sort of start to Google recruiter pays, you'll start to find some initiative coming up. The Institute of Human Rights and Business runs something called the Leadership Group on Responsible Recruitment, and that includes companies that you will know, like Unilever, like HP, who are, you know, trying to provide, you know, the materials and the guidances and that what can companies do. And, you know, and I think you've got to expect in this region that you'll start to see more inquiries, more questionnaires, more European companies who are purchasing from this region sending out teams to audit or assess particular suppliers. I think you can expect all of that to start to go on. So I would encourage, you know, that people who feel, you know, feel they have influence in this region to start encouraging companies to develop their own practices and systems and checks so that they can feel confident that the workers who are working in their operations supply chains are, you know, have been recruited responsibly. Now, often the reality is that recruitment is happening elsewhere. Yeah. So that recruitment is happening in a village in India, it is happening in Vietnam, it is happening in somewhere in Africa, in Ghana, or maybe somewhere where, you know, people have already migrated to, looking to come to the European Union. And often what that then looks like is people are charged a fee for a job. And this, you know, and they're probably told that this is quite a nice, handsome job in Belgrade. And when they arrive here, that's when the switch happens. So it's a bait and switch system that goes on. And, you know, they find themselves working for very low money in a poorly paid job. Their passport may be confiscated. And, you know, they have a debt to the recruiter at that point. So this is the challenge, that actually it's often happening before it arrives in your system. So you do need to be looking at the agencies, looking at what checks you can do on the agencies and their practices, understanding what's happening back in some of the sourcing countries, as well as, you know, looking at what's happening in your own operations. And then I'm conscious of time. The one other thing I would just say is, do also remember, and with Sustainary Partners, we hosted an event just before Christmas in Belgrade, where we spoke to a number of companies in the region about this topic. And of course, one of the things that was beginning to come up is, actually, you've got foreign workers coming in some numbers into rural communities who are not familiar with that. And I think that's, that has been an important part of the learning from the UK experience as well, is how do you, where you have those footprints, as perhaps an agricultural company, how do you work with the local communities to prepare the local communities for the changes that inevitably happen? And that's actually quite a good way of learning about the treatment of those workers. That can be part of your early warning. So there's lots that can be done.
Thank you so much, Luke. I can give the opportunity for audience, but only one question. Before I move to the crossfire segment, I will ask my participants, my panelists, only to answer to one word next segment, but is there, please, but be short.
Raškaj, so when do you think that AI skills will be ready? Do you have some ideas, some discussions?
Dominik, ali molim te samo kratko, zato što imamo još jedan segment.
Aha. Pa što se tiče umjetne inteligencije, da. Pa gledajte ovako, probat ću u kratkim crtama, već vidimo znači da ugrožava određena radna mjesta, poglavito u PR-u, marketingu i prije na našem Balkanu naši ljudi nisu toliko cijenili i razumjeli, mislili su da je trošak sve što se tiče PR-a i marketinga i vidimo već da u tim sferama se gube određena radna mjesta i morat ćemo na neki način brojne ljude koji su završili takve obrazovanje i fakultete na tom nivou zaštititi jer umjetna inteligencija u određenom dijelu već uzima maha, ma koliko god se ono govorilo u svijetu da neće se gubiti radna mjesta, međutim činjenice i statistike sa Zavoda za zapošljavanje trenutno govore neke druge stvari i vidimo da tu još kaska i Europska unija, ne zna se koje su to regulative, kako će disati samo tržište jer vidimo i ove brojne nestabilnosti koje se dešavaju u jednu ruku. Kao i što smo na početku govorili, morat ćemo paziti i na naše poslodavce jer on će morati negdje praviti te uštede, ali isto tako ni mi ne trebamo izmišljati neku toplu vodu, nego treba ćemo zapravo gledati kako će disati ti zakoni u Europskoj uniji, da li će praviti više štete ili benefita samim radnicima i u kompanijama, ali da će biti izazovno u nekom narednom periodu hoće, jer umjetna inteligencija je definitivno budućnost, samo je pitanje koja je to crvena linija koju mi ne smijemo prijeći i dopustiti da gubimo sva radna mjesta. Mislim da nismo još u toj fazi kao u Kini, da si možemo priuštiti da nas ona potpuno zamijeni.
Hvala, Dominik. We have only time for my final question. As you remember, I announced that to give me your opinion. What do you think? What today middle-aged generations, children, will inherit from their parents' companies? Watch, gold or silver necklace, bracelet, laptop, headphones, mini robots, or free access to Gen AI Pro, or some other platforms, or my favorite trip around the world. Andrea, will you start?
Yeah.
What do you think?
They will inherit how not to approach things and run processes.
Okay, really creative. Elena, we are middle-aged generations. Remember it.
Well, we are in a generation that we had to adapt. Yes. So we lived through the tradition.
What so our children will inherit from
I don't think that they will inherit anything.
Anything, okay.
Because the companies are not ready to invest.
It's also legitimate to have that. Dominik?
I think same question with Andrea.
Anything?
Anything, yes.
Luke, please give some positive
notes,
maybe a gold watch or something from UK.
So I own a consultancy. It's pioneering. It's not been an easy journey over the last 23 years, although I'm getting close to deserving my watch. If ethical business practice becomes the thing to do, as I hope it will and believe it should do over the next 5 or 10 years, my children will inherit handsomely. If it doesn't, then I'm sorry, Nicholas and Gracie, you've got to make your own time in the world. The other thing I will say that they are, and I've been exchanging with my 12-year-old daughter over the last 12 hours, one thing she has is a very nice memory of coming here last year and looking around Montenegro a bit. So she will, regardless of whether there's any financial return or not from my pioneering efforts, she's got a lot of memories.
But it's from you, from our company's nothing.
From coming, she's got memories from coming on various work trips with me. I try and do one a year with her.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's really good opportunity when we can bring to our children with us. It's not always possible, but from time to time. Thank you so much. Please give a big applause to my panelists.